cross, and it was better. What about that from Gareth Bale? Off the fence with a fabulous finish. Hooked into the penalty area towards Zidane.
Welcome along to our inaugural European football show. I'm Nathan Murphy. Stephen Doyle is here. Good afternoon.
Hi, Nathan.
Raf Diallo as well.
Thanks for having me.
So the bubble as well and truly burst on Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, beaten 2-0 at home by Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League. They have a mountain to climb if they're to win a first European Cup in over a decade. But what about Spurs and Mauricio Pochettino? Stunning win against Borussia Dortmund. We're going to be looking back on that and looking ahead to all the other last 16 ties that are coming up this week. We'll give you our power rankings of who we think can win the Champions League and the Europa League as well. Just where are Celtic in the reckoning after their 2-0 defeat against Valencia last night. Arsenal slipping up over in Belarus against BATE Borisov, while Chelsea just about doing enough. There's plenty of good teams in the Europa League this year. We'll chat about that as well. You can, of course, get in touch. Just leave a comment on any of our social channels, any of the players, any of the teams that have stood out for any of you nerds who have been watching myself and Steve-O on Virgin Media 3 and 4. Great games.
Yes, indeed. I had Sporting versus Villarreal last night. Unfortunately, it was a 1-0 result when the goal was scored in the 3rd minute. And we had another 87 or so minutes of no goals.
A classic is how Stephen described it on the night, though. We'll talk Champions League first, though. Manchester United against Paris Saint-Germain. Was this any surprise at all?
I think with the build-up, I think everyone had suddenly got excited given what Solskjaer had managed to do in terms of pretty much winning every game bar the one draw, and then going into this game where PSG are missing 2 of the 3 best forwards that they have in Cavani and Neymar. There was an expectation, maybe unrealistic, again kind of one of those kind of bubbles that kind of grow around a certain team, and there was that, I suppose, that expectation then that maybe this, if there's going to be a time they're going to catch PSG cold, it's going to be now. Momentum is with them and PSG are slightly weakened. It actually kind of reminded me of, do you remember the 2009 final, Champions League final in Rome, where United actually were brilliant for the first 10 minutes and then reality then sets in and then they get completely taken apart. So that's what I kind of took out of it.
And that was the case. It was just a reality check for Manchester United on Tuesday night. Part of that feeds into the bubble around Solskjaer and the winning run they've gone on, but also the fact that Paris Saint-Germain are quite a dislikable club, and that feeds into people maybe underestimating them. I say dislikable for, well, off the pitch issues, but also the fact that Neymar plays for them. Even my 6-year-old son, talking about it in the car with him yesterday about Paris Saint-Germain, he goes, I'm saying that's who Neymar plays with, the diver. Literally everybody from 6 years to 60 just knows Neymar as a diver. But we talk too much about Neymar, not enough about Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, but I actually think the man who was crucial to that win the other night was Verratti. Verratti ran the midfield. Manchester United, Nemanja Matic, he's the wrong side of 30. We know Herrera is a pretty limited player. And if you watch the Mbappe goal again, Herrera and Matic have been drawn into the Paris Saint-Germain half. I think Tuchel actually outsmarted Solskjaer the other night with his tactics, and they felt. I actually did the Leicester City Manchester United game recently for Off the Ball, and United do push forward, and Solskjaer has brought that element of the old cliche of taking the shackles off and letting players break forward when they feel is the right time. But I think Tuchel saw that, and he knew that the midfielders would push forward eventually, the 2 defensive midfielders, and they left their back four totally exposed. And as I said, Verratti just ran that show. If you watch that game back again, he was just immense, absolutely immense. And then when you've got Mbappe as a player that can hit another team on the counter-attack, the other team really are goose, and especially when you've got a centre-half pairing like United did the other night. They're not European class by any means.
And once Di Maria got into the game as well, because I think there was a moment where Ashley Young did try and take him out essentially and shove him slightly into the advertising.
He was looking out to get a red card, wasn't he?
Yeah. But luckily he came back as well from it.
This may seem like a slightly ridiculous statement, considering he's won 3 Champions Leagues, won 7 La Ligas, won UEFA Cups, won absolutely everything in the club game, and was part of the greatest club team of all time. Dani Alves still feels as though he's underappreciated.
Yeah.
That there's some, and maybe it's only in this part of the world, that we still have a viewpoint of right backs and full backs. I know he's playing a slightly different position, but that they should be defenders first and foremost. Like what Dani Alves could do, and likewise probably Marcelo to a certain extent at Real Madrid. Like there's such a key part of everything that this Paris Saint-Germain team wanted to do, that Barcelona wanted to do, the width they give him, the attacking option, that for some reason still people go, he wasn't a great defender. Who cares?
Yeah, and especially they have a back three there that's orchestrated by Thiago Silva, and he was excellent the other night as well, wasn't he? And they really, if you look back, Paris Saint-Germain just clogged up that area where United like to attack, that area just in front of the box, and every time you look there was about 7 wide shirts, and United just couldn't find a way through. So I really think Tuchel, he outsmarted Solskjaer. He knew what United were going to bring, and he stopped it.
I think it's that Premier League arrogance as well. If you don't see them playing in the Premier League all the time, you just assume they're not of that same level, which of course is far from true, given if you look at, say, the Roll of Honour in the Champions League, how many English teams have won it recently?
Either of you give United any chance in the second leg?
No, absolutely
not. That's over.
Do you?
Done.
Absolutely not.
No.
What about Roma Porto? So Roma won this game 2-1. Nicola Zaniolo properly announcing himself to the world, 19 years of age, scored 2 goals. I just saw the highlights of this quality-wise. Roma obviously got to semi-finals last year. Are they anywhere near that level this year?
No, they kind of ripped up the script a little bit. So they've the former Sevilla sporting director who now kind of runs the club in terms of signings. And I heard it over the summer that it was almost like he went out and bought a load of Football Manager wonder kids, put them all in the team together, and then just hope for the best. They are very inconsistent. I think they're something like 5th or 6th in Serie A at the moment, which is not where they want to be ambition-wise. But still, they've been able to kind of roll through Europe at the moment. The only thing is Porto are quite dangerous in this competition, so I would be very worried for Roma in the second leg.
Yeah, Porto don't concede a lot, do they? No. They've got a pretty steady back four there.
Opposing home ground as well. The Dragao is a very cliche top place to go.
And as well, I suppose the attacking players that Roma have, there's a couple of young players in there, and the likes of young Kluivert there and Zaniolo, who we've mentioned already. Still, though, I think with Dzeko, you've always got a chance. Dzeko he's like a fine wine. I think he's getting better with age, a bit like Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's such a crucial player to what Roma do. And I think his experience...
You can be kind to the lad there now, Steve-O. He's no Zlatan.
He's good, but he's no Zlatan.
I've covered a couple of Roma games this season, and he barely touched the ball.
Yeah. Well, I just mean in the fact that he's I think it's his movement and what he does to help to bring the younger strikers into the game. They're always going to be, I suppose they've got Kolarov as well playing at left back as well. That bit of experience will help
them. Rossi's there.
But I think when you look at the two teams, I would fancy Porto really to go through, and especially with the away goal now.
If it had stayed 2-0, I think I would have maybe just about stuck with Roma, but 2-1, it's very dangerous because all Porto have to do is score an early goal, and then Roma have to come chasing, and they're so inconsistent at the moment, and there's no real stability about the place that you'd expect maybe Porto to pick them off then.
So that was Tuesday night. Wednesday night at Wembley, we had one of Spurs' great nights, a 3-0 win over Borussia Dortmund, which I don't think anybody expected considering how Dortmund are going along in the Bundesliga this season. Second half was chalk and cheese, first half to second half. Whatever happened in those Spurs players, particularly down that left wing, where they suddenly realised we're not just going to sit back and let these guys come at us, we're going to take the game to them. Seems quite simple in hindsight, but there was a lot of bravery there from Pochettino in the way he set Spurs up.
I think though as well, and I actually was lucky enough to get to see Borussia Dortmund back in December. I went on a little German tour to see a couple of games over there, and the one thing I noticed about Borussia Dortmund is they're fantastic. The front six are brilliant. I think they were really hit by the loss of Marco Reus and Alcacer. Alcacer is phenomenal, and I didn't realise how good he was when I actually saw him playing in the flesh. His movement in the box, he's so sharp, and he's able to really outsmart defenders with his movement. So I think he was a big loss, and Royce, I don't need to tell you why he was such a big loss. But Borussia Dortmund at the back are terrible. They've got Toprak in there, who is their experienced centre half. He's 29 years of age.
Who's the other centre half?
And then young Diallo, Raf. No relation.
Definitely
not anymore.
No. He's 22, and I think Pochettino saw these guys they're weak at the back, and there's a way to get at them. I have to say I was surprised when I saw...
Weak at the back, you say, except for our boy Zagadou.
Yeah, wow, 6'5", 19 years of age. This guy's going to be something else, but he's just too inexperienced now. I was surprised to see Vertonghen picked when I saw Vertonghen picked that left wing back, I thought this is a bit odd, but it paid off, didn't it, in the end?
Yeah, it's a remarkable result when you look at the Spurs team of one fight coming in, playing at centre half. As you say, Jan Vertonghen stuck out in the left wing because both Davies and Rose are out injured. Even Serge Aurier playing at right wing back with Kieran Trippier not there. I think Moussa Sissoko has been a revelation over the past 6 weeks for Spurs. That game against Manchester United, he was the best player on the pitch until he went off injured. That really felt as though it was the turning point, as United could get at them in midfield then. Harry Winks still trying to establish himself. No Kane, no Ali, and still to pull off a result like that. It's one of the best results for an English team in Europe for quite a few years.
I'd agree. But I just think as well, I know Dortmund are flying high at the top of the Bundesliga, but that, as I said, I'll just keep going back to that back forward. They're just like Toprak. Do you know what I mean? He's a Turkish international. He's average at best. You know, he's not the class of a defender that you're going to see winning a Champions League. He really isn't. And if you're depending on that guy to anchor your defence, I'm sorry, you're really you're up against it.
I like how you're picking on him more than the other the other fella, Diallo.
Has he brought shame to Diallo? Diallo name?
We've had a few people who've let the clan name down. There are millions. Well, apart from myself, like there are millions of Diallos around the world, just like so many Murphys in this country.
Well,
it's that common name.
Exactly. So Real Madrid won 2-1 away at Ajax. They've won 4 of the last 5 tournaments. They're not among the top 2 or 3 teams though when you look at the odds for this. I'm going to say this game went exactly as I predicted, that Ajax played brilliant football, were a better team, but just don't have anybody to score enough goals. That for all the talent they have, they don't have a...
They had Tadic playing up front, didn't they? Which is the kind of explanation.
That's exactly my point. They've any amount of talent behind them, but they just lack that number 9.
Big striker. Yeah, definitely. And they were a bit unlucky though as well, weren't they, with that VAR situation? Which again, it took about nearly 3 minutes to sort it out, and I think they only added on 2 minutes at the end of the half. You know, they got to sort this stuff out. It's bizarre, but again, like you were saying, and it's funny. PSV Eindhoven are kind of a similar team in that they've got a lot of young talent there, but they don't have that number 9 to kind of put the ball away on a consistent basis.
Well, PSV Eindhoven, if we were doing this show at the end before Christmas, and you were to talk about the most unlucky team in all of European football, it's without question PSV Eindhoven.
Yeah.
They were brilliant in the group stage of the Champions League. They outplayed pretty much every team they went up against, yet somehow conspired to lose games from going in front and missed opportunities. And if they'd got through to the Europa League ahead of Inter Milan, I probably would have had PSV Eindhoven as one of the favourites for that competition.
Yeah, definitely, I'd agree there. But are we saying, like, is Dutch football back on the way up? Or
well, it obviously is, because there are signs that the national team is, like, their centre-back partnership for the next 5 years is De Ligt and Van Dijk. Yeah. It don't get any better than that.
Frankie de Jong's going to Barcelona for 60 odd million, and I saw some of his touches during that game. Really good. De Ligt again, the same. They have a few, you know, Donny van de Beek was the one kind of anchoring the Ajax midfield as well. They all had lovely touches, but I think the one that kind of stole the thunder, like outside of Ajax, Vinicius at Real Madrid. You know, everyone thought Gareth Bale will probably be the person who pushes on after Ronaldo, and now it's this 18-year-old Brazilian kid, and he was the difference, I think, along with Benzema.
It looked as though it was the day he really announced his arrival, because he got minutes here and there during the group stage and had flashes, but didn't look as though there was any great consistency, but there were definitely signs of that. And so they know how to get it done is the thing with Real Madrid. It's hard to write them off because they know how to win these big games. They still, in loads of areas of the pitch, don't look like where they were certainly 2 years ago.
They are to the Champions League what the Germans are to the World Cup, aren't they? Really,
you're refusing to write them off. You're refusing.
Well, look, and as well, like Benzema, you know, love him or hate him, and I know there's a lot of hate out there for him, but he's a finisher.
Why do people hate him?
Well, you know, he's got some.
It's a long story.
Let's not get into his personal stuff, but I don't think he's a very likeable guy, is he?
Let's
really?
get Matthew Valbuena on the line.
But look, he's a finisher. That's one thing you can say about Benzema, and you never lose that. You know, he's an absolute world-class finisher. I think if he's in the team, Real Madrid always have a chance as well. And again, like, look, they're back four. You know, Ramos, another love-hate character. But again, like, once you've got him in there, you've always got a chance of keeping out goals and stuff.
All right, that's your Champions League review. Let's look at the Europa League. Celtic beaten 2-0 by Valencia. Arsenal beaten 1-0 away at BATE Borisov, while Chelsea had a 1-0 win in their game away at Malbo. We'll start at Celtic, I guess. What happened, Steve-O?
Now, I have to say I only saw highlights because I was working on a different game last night, but I don't know. Look, obviously missing Cham, missing Tierney, missing Rogic. Like, they're three big players for Celtic, and especially Chan, when you're playing a big game like this against a tricky Spanish side who've got good attacking nous. You need somebody like Chan in there to help. Scott Brown had an awful game as well last night. I saw a couple of highlights, and in the build-up to one of the goals, he was really poor.
The derby, the Old Firm derby, the last one I watched.
Yeah, and I'm a Scott Brown fan. I think he's been brilliant for Celtic for the last few seasons, but he was really lost there last night without Cham. And I think as well, Kieran Tierney missing. He's such a vital cog in that Celtic machine. And yeah, they're relying on some young players up front, the likes of Oliver Burke and all, who's definitely got potential. But at this stage and at this level of the Europa League, you know, they're just not ready for this kind of competition. And Valencia, yeah, good side. I think they're going to go through now, aren't they?
Yeah, they've been poor in their own domestic league generally, but yeah, they did way too much for Celtic. They're operating in completely different leagues.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, well, obviously in the literal sense,
in a different league,
but in the figurative sense as well.
Well, our debate on today's show is about Celtic and whether or not they can be a force in Europe again. Stephen is going to be for that, despite what he's just said, and I am, well, very much against that notion. First, though, let's hear from somebody who really knows what he's talking about. Niall Quinn was on Virgin Media Sport last night. He wasn't impressed by the standard he saw from this Celtic team.
They weren't good enough on the night, and they can play better, there's no doubt about that, but the mistakes they made and the sloppy passing and the carelessness at times, you know, against a well-organised team who were brighter than them in lots of ways, but I just felt, you know, Celtic didn't do themselves justice. They're better than that. I was expecting a carry-on from the great fanfare before the match. I was expecting a cascade of Celtic attacks to put everybody under pressure, but they just kept giving the ball away. They got no support up to Burkham, and they did try and harass and press. Valencia were way too clever for them, outfoxed them all night, and were worthy winners. But again, you point back to mistakes, you know, the mistakes to allow the goals to happen, and it's just, you know, whatever Brendan says in his press conference, the fact of the matter was his team were sloppy tonight, but they also met a very good team in Valencia's.
Yeah, they certainly were sloppy. Virgin Media Sport, the new home of European football in Ireland. More than 400 UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Nations League games live this season. Virgin Media Sport exclusive to all Virgin Media TV customers, who can also download the TV Anywhere app and stream all the action whenever and wherever they like. Raf, you are going to be the adjudicator. You're going to cast judgment upon this, Stephen. I will be the gentleman. I will let you go first. You have got 60 seconds to make the case that Celtic are not finished as a force in Europe.
Okay, well, listen, they spent over £4 million last year on a light show, which we're told is going to give the greatest spectator experience in the whole of Europe. I'm sorry, but the spectator experience I want to see when I go to a football match is the team being able to play well. We need to get rid of Boyata, get rid of Simonovic, and get some decent defenders in there. We've seen over the last few years that a club like Sevilla, who won the Europa League on numerous occasions, can do it with very limited resources. So we need to start investing in players. Start investing in the pitch as well. Apparently 1.3 million was meant to be spent on the pitch last season. It's an absolute disgrace. That needs to get sorted out as well. And I think if they can get the playing staff right, if they can get the pitch right, the parquet factor then comes into play. And as I said, we've seen over the last years the likes of Marseille have got to a Europa League final, Ajax have got to a Europa League final. It is possible for a club that isn't involved in the top 5 leagues in Europe to get to a final, and once you get to a final, it's game on, anybody's game, and Celtic can definitely be a force in Europe once again.
Well, you're disqualified for going over the time, so everything you've said is completely irrelevant. Am I on? Listen, I think you've made my point for me, Stephen. I don't even need to say anything about this. I think you look at where Celtic are right now, it's a lucky dip transfer policy. They're dipping down into the lower divisions and they're hoping something sticks. There's no great vision there for what they're trying to do. There's complete and utter potluck, and that's never going to be a sustainable way to succeed. Also, the Celtic Park factor is dead and gone. It's now myth, these great European nights at Celtic Park. They've won 3 of their last 11 games at Celtic Park in the Champions League and the Europa League. That's what they were all about. That's all they had, was that home support that Niall Quinn spoke about. It's gone. And also, they have a manager who's an absolute bluffer. And while he's there, nothing is going to change. Unfortunately, you look through that Celtic team, they're a million miles away from being a force in Europe. They may get lucky the odd season, they may go on a run, but there is no sustainable long-term future for Celtic achieving success at Europa League or Champions League level.
I wasn't a Brendan Rodgers believer, but I was converted over the last couple of seasons. One of the big problems as well is Boyata has down tools in exactly the same way that Virgil van Dijk did
against the rules.
When he got whingy and wanted to leave Celtic. Absolute disgrace.
It's already gone over time.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm just going to make the point here, okay? Just like Virgil van Dijk did, Boyata has down tools because he got the sniff of a bigger club.
But you can hardly blame Virgil van Dijk for wanting to go on and become the best centre-back in the world.
Wait till he gets tired of Liverpool. He's got a down tools at Anfield when Real Madrid come in looking for an opportunity to sign him.
Wow, there's a lot of bitterness there. Raf?
I think this is such a difficult one to choose. Actually, Nathan, you're right on this one. Celtic are done for.
I think Stephen was half-hearted in his defence of...
Celtic are done for.
Unfortunately for Celtic and Brendan Rodgers
Europe,
and everybody else. The footballing world has conspired against them. Things have
the world has changed. It's not 69.
What they need is those thousands...
Sorry, 67. Sorry, the Lisbon Lions here, yeah.
Those thousands of lads that travel over from Donegal every week, they don't spend any money in the club shop. They go as cheap as possible. So there's no real revenue coming into Celtic is part of the problem for them.
Are you saying people from Ulster are a bit tight?
Listen, if that's what you want to say. Other Europa League stories: Arsenal beaten by BATE Borisov 1-0 in Belarus, and to really rub salt in the wounds, here's a picture of the BATE players, including Alexander Kleb, at 8 o'clock this morning in Burger King having a double Whopper meal. These are the professional athletes that beat Arsenal.
Did you see the state of that pitch as well? What is going on with pitches around Europe? It was an absolute disgrace.
Global warming.
Galatasaray as well. Another rubbish pitch.
Global warming.
Possibly.
Alexander Lacazette was sent off, sort of summed up the night. Just no real discipline, and defensively they're a mess.
Oh yeah, if you look at the Premier League, how many clean sheets have they kept? Now I don't have the stats to hand, but it's
Feck-All is the answer.
Yeah, well, Feck-All, but the likes of even I think Huddersfield have scored against them, and Huddersfield can't really score against most teams, and yeah, it is an issue. It's actually worse probably than at the time when Wenger was there in terms of the defensive stats, because at least sometimes they might get away with it when he was there with the odd clean sheet.
I'd be reluctant to criticise though, because Emery's only in the door. He's using what he had there, that was left from by Wenger. I would give him a couple of more transfer windows to get some decent defenders in there, because the quality of defender he's got there is rubbish.
Well, he won't get a couple more. He'll definitely get one more transfer window, and if there's not an improvement quickly at the start of next season. The problem with Arsenal, when you look at them, is they don't just need some investment. They need 250 million quid. They need an entirely new defence, particularly with Bellerin out for probably until Christmas with that injury. You're right. It's very tough on Emery, because while Wenger couldn't set up a defence in recent years, they just do not have the quality. If your back four is going to be Lichtsteiner at right back, Kolasinac at left back, and you might have Monreal alongside Socrates, or even Koscielny at 33 at this stage, they're playing with their hands tied behind their back.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually Kolasinac has shown that he is actually a good player getting forward. He plays those overlaps from the left hand side, but he's so poor at the back, really poor.
No
defender.
Positional sense whatsoever.
Monreal's playing on the left of a back three. Monreal as an auxiliary centre half, really.
But watching them against Arsenal a couple of weeks ago, and Kolasinac playing on the left side of midfield, and every so often, when you're doing commentary and the ball goes to a player in a certain part of the pitch and you assume it's somebody, and the ball would pop up over on the right hand side and be, wait a second, what the hell is Kolasinac doing over there? Every so often he'd just get a bit bored that the ball hasn't come to him and make a run into centre forward or make a run out to the right side of midfield. Just seems to be no real commitment to doing his job.
You've seen them, I've seen them up close. Guendouzi and Torreira, they're really the two. Xhaka is... he's
but one or the other, I feel, at the moment with Guendouzi and Torreira. The two of them together, neither of them have the experience or confidence to really run a midfield. It feels as though they're both happy. They play an awful lot of balls to each other from very short distance. Guendouzi has a nice burst of pace to him. Torreira is more defensive-minded. I think in two or 3 years, they could be the complete package, but right now it feels as though they need just an extra little bit of quality, and that's the problem with Arsenal.
Yeah,
they have that player in Mesut Ozil at his best, and they, for whatever reason, don't use him, can't use him.
Yeah, look, the Ozil thing is just it's obviously a personal thing between Emery and the player himself, and I don't think it's ever going to be resolved now at this stage.
No, which is a surprise then, and obviously it was more of a legacy of the Wenger era, but letting Ramsey go the way he's being allowed to depart, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You can get rid of one, and probably should have been Ozil, because at least Ramsey does offer you some other things aside from...
The one thing I'd say about Ramsey as well, his character is not in any question whatsoever. I mentioned Van Dijk and Boyata downing tools. Ramsey knew he was on the way out, but he's still putting in 100% every time he goes out into that field.
You're questioning Virgil van Dijk as a man.
Well, you know, I said you mightn't have seen him when he downed tools at Celtic, Nathan, but I did.
All right. Let's have a quick look at the results from the Europa League and the Champions League. Which are we looking at first? Neither. We've ran you through the results from the Champions League. The Europa League was interesting at one stage last night. Not one away team was losing. Yeah. It was a very, very bad night for the home sides. In the end, a couple of them managed to turn it around right at the very end. But we can have a quick look at the results, which should be coming up on screen if you're watching on our social channels. So they're the Europa League results. Benfica winning away at Galatasaray. Sevilla, who are perennial winners of this tournament, a good win away at Lazio. Olympiacos beat Dinamo Kiev. Inter Milan, Ryan Nolan was on the bench, unfortunately didn't come off it for Inter Milan and their victory away at Rapid Vienna. Real Betis against Rennes was a right ding-dong 3-3 draw in that one. As we see, Chelsea won 2-1 against Malmo. Eintracht Frankfurt a 2-2 draw away at Shakhtar Donetsk. Villarreal won 1-0 at Sporting Lisbon. Good win for Victoria Pilsen as well. And Napoli 3-1 winners at Zurich. Let's talk about our power rankings. Who we got first? Steve-o, we'll get your power rankings first. These are your top 5 contenders.
For Champions League, is it first?
Champions League.
Now, maybe it was a little bit too hasty. Were they? I don't know if I put them in that order.
No, you did. That is your order.
Well, I didn't realise I was putting them in order. I just gave 5 teams.
Power rankings.
So Bayern Munich, I'm actually going to take off that altogether.
Here.
I actually, on reflection, listen, Bayern have...
On reflection, I never thought about this.
I've been a busy man the last couple of days. Listen, on reflection, and look, Bayern Munich have had a resurgence over the last number of weeks. They're back on the winning trail, but when you look at the team that they're feeling, look, Lewandowski's going to get goals, but I do think they are lacking the quality that Liverpool have, and I'll probably stick Liverpool in there instead. Regards to the rankings there, look, I'll put my neck on the line here and say Manchester City are the favourites to win the whole thing.
Well done. I'll put my neck on the line. I did actually think about my power rankings in order. Not overly different. I don't see Barcelona being contenders for this Champions League at all. I think they're an absolute mess at the back. Their midfield is nowhere near the quality, and unless Messi single-handedly wins them this tournament, which is not beyond the realms of possibility, I do not see Barcelona contending for this. I think City are the outstanding team in this and should win it. Paris Saint-Germain, because they have one foot in the quarterfinals, probably moves them up. As you say, Real Madrid, you're sort of just trusting them that they can get the job done. I think Liverpool will beat Bayern Munich, and Atletico again have that little bit of knowledge of how to win these big knockout games. Yeah, but the thing is, and you mentioned Barcelona there, the key here is that you need a team that doesn't concede too many goals, and we know Atletico Madrid don't concede many goals, and that's their big weapon here. Barcelona are the same. They've only conceded 23 goals, I think, in La Liga. One of the best defensive records in La Liga. So that absolutely obliterates your arguments that they are weak at the back.
I think that's...
Well, you can prove anything with stats. I've watched Barcelona.
Ter Stegen has bailed them out.
The keeper's been their best player. He is David De Gea for Barcelona right now. And also, having watched them in several Champions League games this season, they've been unbelievably lucky to come up against teams that haven't taken their chances. That is going to change. Now we're in the knockout stages. Rafa, have you any?
I'm surprised not to see Juventus on either list, because obviously they're taking on Atletico, which is going to be a great tie.
You've got to pick one of those teams, don't you?
Yeah, but just the way Juventus are, like they've strengthened the squad obviously by bringing in the likes of Ronaldo and whoever else they have in that squad, and they're flying in Serie A, so they're, they can afford to rest players there as well. Yeah. Atletico aren't quite where I thought they would be. I think I'd tip them maybe potentially to shock Real and Barcelona in La Liga. That's definitely not going to happen. So I think Juventus maybe after Man City would be kind of my 1 and 2 at the moment.
All right, so that's Raf's opinion. Next week you can actually, give your rankings, and we'll...
I'll give it more thought than you did.
Nice little list. Let's look at our Europa League power rankings. A little bit more difficult. Still 32 teams left in this. Who's Steve-o gone for?
Again, not in order, but...
A waste of time.
Well, actually, now that I look at that, I'm kind of thinking, that's probably how I would lay it out. Maybe Sevilla ahead of Napoli, but I just think the quality player that Chelsea have there, I know they're going to be fighting for top 4, but they're the class of player that Chelsea have is so far ahead of some of the other teams left in that competition. I like I like Eintracht Frankfurt. I think the three musketeers they've got up front, Rebic, Gacinovic, really, really good players. And I think with those in the team, and they got a chance of winning, beating anybody. So but I just think Chelsea have to be favourites to win this whole thing. Sarri loves the European competitions as well, and he puts out his best team all the time. So,
all right, so that's Steve-O's power rankings. Here's what I've gone for. All right, so we have the same top three. We've both gone for Napoli, Sevilla in Chelsea in a slightly different order. I'd go along with most of what you say. I think, look, Sevilla know how to get it done, and know how to sort of attack this stage of the season. Real Betis, I think, are a very exciting team. They're tipping along nicely in La Liga, and they've bought very well. They've done their deals very well. They've got Giovanni Lo Celso, who scored last night in that 3-3 draw against Rennes, on loan from Paris Saint-Germain. They've got Yessi in on loan from Paris Saint-Germain. Sergio Canales is a player who's finally fulfilling his potential in the middle of midfield. They're solid at the back, and I think they could go very, very far in this tournament. And the fifth one on my list was Inter Milan, who actually I probably would have had higher, only with everything that's going on with Mauro Icardi at the moment.
Yeah.
If he is fine and playing, I would think Inter Milan are one of my top three. But the fact there seems to be quite a number of issues. Strange player, Icardi, in that he's just a goal scorer. He's the type of player you could see coming to the Premier League for 60 or 70 million quid and being a sort of Alvaro Morata type. Starts well, but he does nothing for long periods of game. He doesn't get involved at all, and then just like that.
Yeah.
Great strength. I just think a brilliant striker. If he has another level, he could be one of the best in Europe. But there seems to be all sorts of contract issues and things like that at Inter at the moment.
Yeah, he has a good record, but I don't. The fact no one's come in from him.
It is strange, isn't it?
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Just on your Betis thing, and again, I was saying him a couple of times earlier in the season, and I know Quique Setien, the coach, is a big Pep Guardiola fan. He kind of bases his football on what he's seen Guardiola do over the years. But they were built on a really solid defence. They conceded 3 goals last night. What's going on there?
Bad night at the office.
Is that a worry for you?
Bad night at the office. Well, it'll be a worry. It'll be a worry if they get knocked out. I can assure you of that. Raf, any other sides that?
Not outside of those ones, unless Arsenal suddenly go on a run that I don't expect. But I'd say it'd be great to have a Sevilla Betis final. Lived in the city for a year, back in 08-09. So I can if that final does happen, don't leave your house if you're in that.
You live in Seville, Raf. You've never mentioned that before.
Somehow this always crops up in conversation, and then I get that mocking tone from Steve-O. But no, I would imagine. Look, it gets feisty between those two teams. It'd be just a great final matchup if the two of them come together.
Watch out, Baku. I'd say they'd be ready for them. I think they'll be all right.
They probably will be. Yeah.
All right, Raf. Great stuff. Steve-O, thank you as well. Nathan. We'll be back every Friday between now and the end of the season with your European football roundup. Do leave your comments below if there's anything you'd like to touch on, any teams that have stood out for you. Otherwise, we'll talk to you next week. Good luck.
This could be the most dramatic story of the season. It's Torres to give Chelsea a place in the Champions League final. The headline has been written.
Unbelievable!
Into Sheringham, and Solskjaer has won it! Through in the box, waiting for the cross, and it was very